Hello and welcome to episode 103 of the Foundry Roundtable, a podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogon1701. With me is a man who will never transfer back to being an optional objective, Greendragoon.
Yeah, although I do put a few in my missions.
Yeah, but you're sort of not optional for us now. Although I will say that Midnight Shadow, who with whom I do my Battlestar Galactica podcast, did say that he could help us stream if for some reason you needed to be gone. So there is that.
It's one of those things I just need to show you guys how everything is set up.
One of these days. I'm sure now that you've got it how you like it, it's probably not overly difficult, right?
Yeah, it's just managing all the scenes.
Well, Markhawkman is not here at the moment, but we will add him if he comes online. But we do have with us a guest, one of our regulars on the show, PaxFederatica.
Greetings.
Welcome once again. So we did get some patch notes up on Tribble earlier today. Unfortunately, none of the fixes for our several issues, including the crazy messed up 2D map editor and the unspotlighting of missions. None of that's in there, sadly. So we will have to keep waiting for that. However, I am told by Primar that the Ferengi Nandi ship, the new one for the summer event, is now in the costume creator over there. So we are getting that eventually, if not in the next build. It's kind of nice. Ships are one of the things that we get more. I don't know if that's a function of if it just automatically goes in because it goes into the ship character creator in the game by default, or if that's something that somebody actually put some effort into. But if it is, we certainly thank them for doing that. So let's see, not too much other than that for news. However, Sir Boulevard also says that the undershirts are in there now too. That's for the new stuff from the summer event, which as you can see, we're in one of the Risa caves on the new Risa map. And while we're talking about that, Dragoon, you had a small discussion topic on this subject, so go for it.
Well, I mean, the existence of this cave and how it kind of seems to mirror the old Risa map leads me to think that at one point they intended to transfer over the Foundry doors from the old Risa map, presumably so they could retire it. Although obviously they never moved on actually retiring the old map and therefore never worked on moving the Foundry doors. But since we've gone through a couple of transitions with moving Foundry doors from an old map to a new map, I was kind of curious what you guys thought about the idea of transitioning over the doors to the new map.
Well, I suppose the question is, do they want to get rid of the old map? And if they do, it's possible that Foundry doors has been the thing that's been holding them back.
So, I mean, I'm kind of one of those people.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I'm kind of one of those people who kind of lobbied to keep the exploration missions way back when, and I also lobbied to keep Memory Alpha. But that was kind of partially because there was nothing replacing them that was new. And I'm willing to fully admit, I kind of think the old Risa map is very much a product of original launch content. And as we've got a much newer and nicer original, or much newer and nicer Risa, I'm kind of okay with the old map being sunsetted. Obviously, it'll still be available as a Foundry map in the Foundry.
Yeah, it is available as a Foundry map. The only one that does allow swimwear, which is nice. So it's not like it would go away completely. It would be there for us to use forevermore. Just the doors will be on this map. I don't particularly have a problem with that because as everybody would be quick to point out, this is the better map.
Yeah.
But, oh, go ahead.
You not go away from the Foundry because, like I said, I've got plans for that map.
Well, no, I would be emphatically against actually pulling a map from the Foundry.
Oh, yeah. That would break a lot of missions.
Yeah.
I don't think it would break any of mine, but it would break a lot. I know I've seen a lot of people use that map, especially people who do like social maps or player housing. I've seen a lot of them use that map.
But I mean, as a
Boulevard
social
says
zone,
that also some of the NPCs are also on this map that are on the old map.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's also Platinum is Forever. I don't know if you remember that mission. That's pretty much that entire mission is on Risa, the old Risa map.
but so what I'm specifically talking about here is the social zone version of the Risa map. Whether or not that still serves a function.
Yeah. And I suppose it, like I said earlier, it kind of comes down to what do they want to do, which is if they have always wanted to get rid of that map, then transfer over the Foundry doors. That's sort of the last thing that's really on that map that's of any use. So get rid of that, and they can get rid of it if they wanted to. I don't know. I am just in general against removing content.
Yeah, but I mean, it's content that's already been replaced.
Yeah, but it's not doing any harm sitting there.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pax.
They don't even use the old map for anything anymore, other than just a hangout.
Nope.
In game, there is no specific use for it other than having Foundry doors. It's essentially like Andoria. And I don't think there was ever any quests or anything that led you there. It was just there. Same with Andoria. But I'm okay with having useless zones, quote useless. I'm doing the air quotes with my fingers there. Things like that don't bother me. I am totally for the devs, quote, wasting time on things that don't have any intrinsic use, because places to hang out. It encourages sort of that emergent gameplay where people go there and they hang out and they invent their own things to do. Like people have parties at Club 47. There's no specific in-game use for Club 47. It's there for people to hang out and do whatever in, and I'm completely okay with zones like that. However, if they wanted to put new doors on this map, because this map's available year round, the resort map, I'd be totally okay with that too.
I don't know. I think to me it seems kind of confusing. If we did have Foundry doors on both this map and the old Risa map, because we say go to Risa, go to the cave, we have to specify no, go to the old map or the classic map, and it just comes off as very confusing to a player.
I wonder if they might not eventually link the two maps. Instead of getting rid of the classic map, I wonder if they could just link the two maps together, and in case they'd want to add something to the classic map as part of the festival.
I don't know. I mean, I'd be in favor of
that.
They
might not be physically able to do that because of the size of both maps.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, the classic map, the new map is just miles better than the old one.
Well, it shows the difference between what they can do at launch and what they can do. How long has this map been in there? 3 years?
Yeah, this is the third summer event.
This is the third summer event, so yeah. So I don't know. I could go either way. I'm fine if they wanted to transfer over the doors and get rid of the old map, but I'm kind of fine with it staying as well.
Well, I think, because we don't do nearly enough of these, that this would make a great community question. So we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Should the old Foundry map be retired and its doors moved forward, or do you think the old Foundry map or the old Risa map still has value.
We do have feedback from one person in our chat room. Sir Boulevard says, bluntly, I'm okay with old Risa being retired.
Another thing they could do with the the old Risa map is maybe make it build a separate quest around it, sort of like they have a separate quest for the gingerbread village in the winter event. I wonder if they might consider doing something like that.
Maybe make it something where
quest
it's
around it.
Or maybe it's like you have to like take a boat out to the old island, something like that, where it's a door within the new. Which would make making Foundry missions all that harder to find if the doors are still in the old map.
They got some flack this year for not really having anything new to do for the summer event. They changed a few old things and altered some of their existing activities, but maybe that's an opportunity for next year rolls around to put some actual events going on the old map as well.
I know I always keep shooting for diving for Lolo Nut Pearls. But I think this year probably it was a little lean just because they've been putting all their time and effort into putting out these featured episodes.
Oh yeah, and I'd honestly rather they focus their effort on that, personally. It's just the timing of these yearly events kind of fall sometimes at inconvenient times in the development schedule.
Yeah.
Sure.
And who knows how they're going to do the climax of the Iconian War. So for all we know, they could be working on some big finale right now.
Yeah, I think it's unclear at the moment whether Season 11 is going to be the end of the Iconian War arc or not.
I think
or if it's going to continue for a little bit.
It was pretty much not going to go past Season 10.
That would seem a little short to me, to be honest, for something that they've been building to since the beginning of the game.
Yeah. I personally want to see like a big climax. I would love to see a like a battle zone of some kind. I mean, I love the Voth ground zone. I think they did knock that one out of the park. I have a lot of fun playing it, even to this day. I would like to see something along those lines. I haven't quite figured out how. But that would be cool, especially since this is supposed to be an invasion.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. Moving along. I have closed the voting on the asset and map polls, and I will be organizing these and putting the results on the forums, but I can certainly talk about some of the top vote getters here. So let's look at the maps first. Not unsurprisingly, the empty exterior ground map got the most votes. Had 30 votes. Let's see, what else? Obviously, the second vote getter was empty interior ground map. So, people obviously want these things to build their sky castles in.
I'm sure it should make Taco pretty happy. I mean, it's got to be about the easiest map he can add.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems like it ought to be. I hesitate to declare anything as easy because I don't know how to do any of this crap. So take Starbase 24, delete all the geometry, and stick it in there as a new map. That's my thought. As far as the interior one goes, I don't know exterior. What's the biggest exterior map we know of? That may be not a question anybody can answer off the top of their head.
By volume, probably the Nopata Desert.
Yeah, Nopata's pretty big.
I want to say there might have been one more that's bigger. Somebody was.
Nopata is a rectangle shape, though. It's not.
Yeah, wasn't Sir Boulevard just doing a bunch of research for this to stick starships in? Or someone else? Somebody was doing research along those lines.
I don't know, but I know the Starbase 24 is, I think, the biggest interior map, or at least it's currently the most empty. It's got the most black space.
Yes, he's got to be right up there. even though only a tiny portion of it is actually usable for ground characters.
Yeah, new ESD was actually the biggest. It was actually too big, and that was the whole problem.
Now, is that problem officially fixed?
Should be, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's fixed. I mean, I was able to publish my mission that uses it 3 times.
Nice. We say thank you, Zero.
Which, obviously, you do have a new mission, and I'll be asking you to tell us about that a little bit later. Don't let me forget.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Sorry, I was vamping there because I accidentally closed the results of the map poll. Okay, so who else got lots of votes? We got the Romulan bridge, the player bridge. That would certainly be a good one because that's a very nice little map. Let's see, also the New Romulus Command and the Origin Bridge and the rest of the Origin interiors. Kind of figure the USS Kirk from one of the early Starfleet missions is a good one for that because it's got a lot of different pieces all together in one map.
Are you thinking of the? We've already got the Kirk.
No. It's the USS Kirk was redone into an Origin style interior.
Sure. There's also that one from the Klingon mission that's really big, but it's in the older style.
Mm-hmm.
The DeWitt. That was what I was thinking of.
Yeah. I believe that was one of the options I had on there. Anyway, let's see. Some of the other ones, Starfleet Academy grounds. The rest of the Romulan player ship interior. New Romulus. This particular one is the Adventure Zone. Zero mentioned that she wanted to get that in when she was on our show not too long ago. And she said that it was too big. It might have to be broken up into various sections, which is just fine by me.
So, Pax, you're a resident Romulan Foundry expert. How do you think it would be best to break apart the Romulan Adventure Zone if it has to be broken into 2 pieces?
I'm thinking one natural place to break it up would be the bridge. I'm trying to think of
in the one that goes over the
one that goes through the river, just south of the falls. So I'm not sure if is there anything else that's accessible to the staging area that doesn't require going over the bridge.
I'm trying to pull up a map of
the problem with it because there is. Well, the Epo field is on the other side of the bridge, and I think you can get to the pass, and that other area next to the mountain pass, without using the bridge.
All right, so I think looking at the map, I think the best dividing line would be between the Epo fields and the south end, inland end of the river. There's a bunch of passes that are all narrow, and it forms almost a straight line across. So then the the ruins and the crater would be on a different map, and then the Epo fields, the Atlia, the Vastin Peaks, and the staging area would be on another map.
Okay.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, that probably would be the best place.
There's a straight line barrier there. I wonder if those were originally designed as 2 separate maps and then combined.
It could very well be they were preparing for the possible eventuality that the that the map had to be split, because I mean there was a lot of experimentation going on with this map.
Yeah. Let's see. Some of the other ones that got plenty of votes were the Romulan Flotilla interior. Got lots of Romulan love. Nimbus 3, the ground version. The Intrepid interiors, which are very good, of course.
Definitely a popular choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the ones I voted for were the ones relating to Legacy of Romulus.
Yeah, go figure. Considering how many of your missions involve Romulans and New Romulus itself.
Yep.
Well, we all have our banners to carry.
Yes, indeed. Let's see. So the other polls we did were the asset polls, and I did them two different ways. So I've got one is, Taco likes to do things in big groups. So, I had people vote on, what map do you want him to go into and tear apart and get all of the objects he can next and put them in. And then I also did one for single objects that didn't really fit into those categories, even though some of them might be done if they tore apart certain maps. So let's see. Let's look at the group one first. The map that got the most polls was the Origin Interior. And I think, and I don't know how easy this is going to be for Taco to do, is put in wall sections. I mean, how easy would it be to actually carve up a section of wall and stick it in for us to use? And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, what I would really like is what they use to build their maps, because I mean, it's I can't believe that they go back to 3D Studio Max and remodel all of their ship interiors from scratch. I mean, they're going to have pieces that they put together to put or make these maps. So I got to think that they're built or they're modeled for to be in sections. So I'm hoping we can get those sections.
Primar in the chat, or Relum in the chat room says, "I don't care if it's easy. He just needs to do it." Definitely, walls. Walls is one of the things that we see asked for a lot, because walls allow us to build our own versions of the cryptic maps.
Yeah,
allow us to do sky castles. So,
but ceilings are also important. We don't tend to get very many ceilings, and then we just have to stick floors as ceilings.
Let's see. That one was the top vote getter. The next one was the Fleet Star Base. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the Fleet Star Base, especially that ops map. And there's some interesting color floors, I remember, in some of the other portions. But that's definitely one you could get a lot of interesting ceiling sections for that, for use in your own star bases or starships, and big overarching windows. Those could be quite cool.
And if you think about it, the Fleet Star bases are the most modern non-ESD star bases we have.
Mm-hmm. The next one was Dyson's the Solanae Sphere Interior. There's several maps to choose from on that one. You got Fleet Command, you got stuff from several different missions, but obviously that would allow us to set missions in the Dyson Sphere Interior. After that, we have a tie between Nimbus 3. There's definitely some interesting stuff we could get out of Nimbus 3. And Voyager Interior.
Not really.
That's another one
there.
where it'd be great to have walls. Walls and ceilings from that map. Also getting some good votes were, let's see, Elachi Interior. Would be great to be able to build our own Alachi interiors, especially for those of us doing Iconian War stuff. Kobali Prime, all kinds of great assets on Kobali Prime, especially the buildings. The Romulan player ship.
Not surprisingly, I voted for a lot of that stuff.
All right. So that was the map poll, or the map group object poll. Now for single objects, yep, new Federation walls from the Origin interior was the biggest one. Obviously, if he pulls apart the Origin interior, that satisfies that one. Next on that list is transporter pads. I know they're available in a variety of factions. The Romulan ones are easy. You could just take one of the ones from the Romulan camps and that we have now that's from New Romulus and just delete all the tent stuff.
I think this is something worth following up on. Last time we asked for transporter pads, we got an entire transporter room.
Yes.
Just the one Federation one. What are people actually looking for with this?
Just the floor of that pad is the floor of the pad is what we're essentially looking for.
Okay. Now, what about the back walls?
Since the beginning of the Foundry, we've had to create that ourselves when we've wanted it. Just the floor.
So what we're really talking about is the direct pad that people stand on.
The glowy stuff.
Not necessarily the backing to it. Or
no, not necessarily. But I mean, if he wants to put stuff like that in, if it's available, we can find it. That'd be great. A lot of this is up to Taco or whoever else wants to put in assets of, where they get this stuff from and how much of it they do, obviously. They could do none of it. But, there's Romulans transporter pads, there's Federation transporter pads, there's Klingon transporter pads on many different maps. There's
also a non-aligned transporter pad.
Yep, there's generic ones. Speaking for myself, generally that is what we mean is the floor.
Now I'm trying to remember, was there a Dyson specific transporter pad?
I don't remember one.
I recall. I keep thinking of the Delta Alliance command in the General Dyson sphere.
Yeah, but you sort of beam into an empty spot on the floor. You don't have a transporter pad.
Okay, then maybe I'm not remembering correctly.
Let's see. Next on this particular list is Romulan doors. A big thing that people want is the kind of doors that open and close when you walk up to them. Not unlike the Starfleet ones that we've had since the beginning of the Foundry.
Well, we didn't have those to start, did we? Those were added later.
We had one.
Yeah, I think the only one we from the start was the Federation style.
Yeah, it was Federation style, and it would only open and close, and then I think later on they might have added the ones that are locked closed and the ones that are different colors. And the doors without any frame.
Which were specifically for the bridge of the Odyssey that has the frames, but the doors wouldn't work when they were baked onto the map.
Sir Boulevard says that the Genolan sphere does have a transporter pad. The Solana one does not.
Okay.
So you were correct. Just you were thinking of the Genolan sphere.
Thought I said the Genolan sphere.
You might have. I was thinking of the Solana. I just didn't hear
that one that does not have a transporter.
Yes. So you were correct. Next on the list is Klingon doors, the opening and closing variety. So that's obviously a popular choice. We would very much like to have those. So that, obviously the doors that we have now are somewhat limited use for those two races.
Pax, were you going to say something?
Yeah, especially the Kittimer ones.
Oh, those would be awesome. The triangular ones that are in 3 parts. That would be fantastic to have those.
So something I would like to add when it comes to these animated doors, I would like to see is have the locked and unlocked versions of the doors be the doors themselves only, and then have the frame as a separate piece. Because when the door frame is triggered, pathing ignores it, which means that it causes no end of problems for bridge officers and stuff as you try to get through the door.
This is true. So yeah, that would be preferable. And if along the way we could get an empty version of the Federation door frame, that'd be cool too.
As well as a locked version of the doors, only the doors.
Yes. Let's see. The other top vote getters were warp cores. We had a funny exchange with Taco when we were setting up this poll and asking for input, because people kept requesting working warp cores, and he was like, "Exactly what do you people think I am?" and he was of course being silly, because of course what we mean when we say that is ones with blinky lights that are on.
Animated.
That's the word.
Yeah,
Animated.
I have long called specifically for 2 different versions Singularity Core. One that's animated and one that's not.
The spinny
one specific
big ball and one that's
that would be for normal operation. The one that's the unanimated one would be for like malfunctioning situations and such.
Do we have a version that's unanimated?
I assume we could make one.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to Deanna Troi and Timescape emphatically saying that the Romulan singularities cannot be shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, isn't there one mission that has the Singularity Core static? I see it might be Capture the Flag. I seem to remember
there was a while since I played that one. I do not know.
And it was kind of imagine that they're a black hole. So basically, if the thing stops spinning, the black hole consumes the ship.
That would be bad.
Maybe that's where the scene you need to see. The thing has stopped and you run away as the ship disintegrates behind you.
There's a number of Federation cores that could be added. There's one on the Defiant interior. There's one on the standard ship interior.
I'm going to bet you there's only half of a Defiant warp core.
No, it's fully there. Well, I mean, it's the top half. You could infer that there's another part of it that's sunk into the floor, but
yeah. But unlike the other warp cores, that one would have to be sunk into the ground.
Yeah. And then there's the one in the Voyager interior,
which also would have to be sunk into the ground because it's probably only the top half. I think the one in the Sovereign engineering look like is probably the only one where we have both sides.
There's Klingon warp cores as well. But I think we essentially have the pieces that could build one of those right now. Maybe there might be some larger parts that aren't available. I'm trying to think back to some of the missions where you go, or the Klingon ship interior, and I haven't been at the Klingon ship interior in a long time.
Oh, that's right. There is the Klingon. Well, we've got the Klingon core, don't we? Or at least parts of it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think we've got some parts of it. Like they're labeled as generator pieces, I believe.
Well, that's a good question. Do we have enough parts to make a Klingon warp core?
We have enough parts to make a generic warp core because we have what is essentially pieces of the warp core from the Azura in the
old
very
version,
first Fed mission.
where they corrected the colors. So ours are purple.
Yes, there's much purple. Sir Boulevard is saying we have that one on map, but not the warp core itself as an asset.
Yeah.
Let's see. Some of the other top vote getters were an Iconian ground gateway. Obviously, we have that baked into a couple maps, but we'd like to be able to place one. And flight points for extravehicular suits. That's an interesting one. Because we see that in a few cases. You remember in Boldly They Rode, where you click on a point and click a button on your EV suit and it goes there?
Okay.
That's what it's done.
Okay.
That'll
be a good question.
That might be a non-trivial thing to add, but it'd certainly be fun to have.
Sort of like the zipline points that I've suggested in the past.
Yeah, zipline points would be along that same line.
You'll be really lucky if that's simple and not some very...
Yeah, I don't claim to know how simple that would be.
Because that has the player crossing that has a ton of stuff. So I'll be really surprised if that's something that can be dumped into an asset.
And then another one on here is the perennial favorite, comes up every time we do asset request things, is the bomb. Yeah, the spatial charge, to be more precise, is actually available as part of a store crate asset that has a whole bunch of them sort of lying around. But we'd like to have that one by itself that we can attach to.
Yeah, the crate one's problematic because you got to sink all the crates into the wall.
Yeah.
And then there's 3 of them.
It's a bit difficult to use. So I'll be writing those up and posting those later this week on the official forums. So keep an eye out there. Obviously, you kind of got to take these with a little bit of grain of salt because not everybody in the whole Foundry community is going to see them and vote on them. And it's sort of only a recommendation that says, Taco or Zero, if you have time to add some more Foundry assets, this is maybe what we'd like you to focus on. And they can take
One thing about the satchel bombs, would they just include the bombs themselves, or would they also include the geometry of the kind of the empty geometry that you see in game where you're supposed to place them? I wonder would those even be separate assets, or could they be done as basically one asset where it's rendered at first as the empty geometry and then it automatically gets filled in when the player interacts with it?
I would think that would be 2 objects.
Yeah, I don't think it could be done as one, not and make it useful to us. But yeah, it could be done as 2.
That would be certainly neat to have.
Glowy effect.
There's a good example in the latest featured episode, House Peg, in which you set a charge, and first the outline is there, and then the charge actually materializes. There's some of that type in the early Federation missions, and then there's one that's actually a different style in Step Between the Stars? No, not that one. What's the first one on the wharf?
Sphere of Influence.
Sphere of Influence, yeah. Where you set charges on the Iconian gateway, and they're sort of circular instead of the usual sort of stand-up type. So there's a couple different kinds in there. But anyway, those are the map and asset polls. Primer was going to do a one for, I believe, NPCs or costumes. NPCs, I think, was what he was looking at, in NPC groups, to see if we could get some of those blanks filled in, because we're missing a few of those. He said he got distracted and hasn't finished it, but hopefully this will remind him to go ahead and get that started. All right, so we haven't done what we've been working on yet, and I can only say for that I have been sick and not feeling like working much in the Foundry, and also doing the summer event stuff, so I haven't done anything. I don't know, have you guys done much lately? Well, actually, I know you have, Pax, but before we get to you, Dragoon, have you been doing much work lately?
Not really, no. I'm kind of waiting for the fix for the editor to come in. I'm someone who works very visually, and the map designs and the scenes are kind of the core of how I work. So, unfortunately, part 3 isn't far enough along that I'm past that point. So I'm kind of on hold until that gets fixed.
That's fair enough. I've kind of halted work on one of the ones that I had been working on that I talked about before season 10 came out, precisely because I had a sky castle that wasn't finished, and it's a bit difficult to build one right now. So there's that. But Pax, tell us about your new mission.
I just, as I mentioned earlier, completed my contribution to the Tales from the Frontlines series or anthology. It's titled Ghost's Gambit. It obviously kind of refers back to Ghosts of War. In fact, it's sort of at least a spiritual remake of Ghosts of War Part 5. One thing that I get a lot in review comments is people ask me if I'm ever going to update that mission, which takes place on the old ESD, to the new ESD. And I keep telling them, no, that takes place in 2409, not 2410. So I'm going to leave that map the way it is. But I got to thinking, hey, it would be kind of cool if there was some way that I could do an updated version of that. And that kind of became the kernel of what became Ghost's Gambit.
Well, the funny thing is that because of the way ESD was updated, if you're a new player, you still see the new ESD even in 2409.
It's true.
It's one of those things where it's kind of, you just have to chalk it up to MMO logic versus any sort of real storytelling logic.
Yeah, it's often very difficult to show things like the passage of time. Like you've got in World of Warcraft, they did several expansions ago this big thing where they redid most of the maps in the world and changed them dramatically as part of an actual event in the timeline. However, if you're a new player, you see those new maps, even though you're sort of doing missions in the old time, or I don't know, or maybe they've upgraded it to the new time where new players start in the new time. I don't know. It's very complicated and sort of weird.
Anyway, my new mission also brings back a couple of Foundry characters. One is your Delta recruit contact for the Federation, who figures fairly prominently in the beginning of the episode and at the very end of the episode. He's basically your mission giver. And the other one, I won't spoil here because that character's presence figures into my Gonzo twist ending.
Gonzo twist ending. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it basically takes the entire story and kind of turns it on its head.
Well, I say, Foundry authors, don't ever be afraid to do that, because that'd be a lot of fun. But you do have to sort of make it believable in a sense. That it's not something that's so far-fetched that the player goes, no, that was stupid, and turns it off.
Yeah.
So don't go all M. Night Shyamalan on it.
I do have a question for you, Pax. Does one need to have to have played your Ghosts of War series to enjoy this new mission?
Not really. It only kind of lightly touches on the plot of Ghosts of War. In fact, at the very end of the mission, when you're talking to the Delta recruit contact, he kind of talks about the events of that series, but he says, "You may or may not remember any of this."
That's what I like to see people do when they make a mission that kind of follows up a previous one, is to insert some dialogue for people who haven't played the first one, and kind of figure it into the story where a person says, ask you if you remember that. If you say no, or say, ask you if you were a part of that, or, an NPC comes on that says that reintroduces themselves, and you have the player say, "But sir, we've met before," or something like that. You kind of work it into the dialogue, so maybe it's not necessarily obvious, but it's still there. All right, so everybody get playing Ghost Gambit if you have some time.
Yep. And also, now that I'm done with that, I'm going, over the next day or a couple of weeks or so, I'm going to be giving my Valley of the Shadow trilogy kind of a fresh coat of paint, something that's been a bit long overdue.
Sounds good. What are some of the things you might do to it?
Well, I just kind of accumulated I started compiling a list of basic action items for each episode. Mostly fairly minor stylistic stuff. But I remember when you guys did the live play of part 3 with me, and this was like 6 or 7 months ago, and there was some specific set of changes that you'd recommended to me that I'd never gotten around to being able to implement, and that's one of the things on my action item list is finally trying to get that taken care of, getting that incorporated into the mission.
Was that something that we had said during one of our playthroughs?
Yeah, it was basically kind of redoing the two, kind of a different way of re-implementing the two playing options on my custom interior.
Well, I was just going to caution you, don't take anything we say seriously, because we're not like smart in any way. No, I'm kidding, of course. But watching a live playthrough of your mission can give you so many ideas, and so many technical things to fix, and so many ideas of, oh, I could totally make that better. So live playthroughs are probably one of the most valuable tools we can have as authors, and unfortunately there's not nearly enough people to do them.
And anyway, once I get done with that, then I'll get back to work on the other projects that I have in progress. My Delta Quadrant mission that I've mentioned in the past, and the Klingon Twilight of the Gods trilogy. I've already got Act 1 of that pretty close to being finished, actually. I just got to do the other 2 parts.
That reminds me, I should send you a sketch that was done for me. Adam Eiley, who designed the Enterprise F, the Odyssey class, was trolling around on Twitter. One of the things he likes to do as an artist is do sort of warm-up sketches before he actually starts getting into whatever he's working on at the time. And he was trolling around for ideas, and me and Casmodian and some other people on Twitter gave him some ideas, and mine was to draw a picture of the Klingon who rebelled against the gods, who of course is Kortar, who now he runs the Barge of the Dead. And so he got me a really neat sketch of it, sort of done in like the old Greek style. So I'll remind me after the show and I'll show you it. It's pretty neat.
Oh,
Ancient Klingons is to do in the Foundry. I just wish we had more options for melee combat.
yeah. Although
Wasn't,
the timeline of my mission is, there seems to be some kind of confusion about exactly when the gods were slain. Was it only a millennium ago or several millennia ago?
Yeah. The timeline of the Klingons is sort of interesting because even Kahless himself, a legendary figure, if you go by what the show says, only existed as far as Earth terms in around like the 5th century AD.
Yeah.
It's not really that long ago.
Mm-hmm. In fact, according to Memory Alpha, the Klingons got rid of their gods right at about the time, or at least shortly after, the Herc invasion. So the story I have in mind kind of ties in with that, too.
I wonder where they pull that from, though. Because we only did it.
I think they're proceeding from the assumption that the gods were slain a single millennium ago, which I think was already established as being about the same time as the Herc invasion.
Because the only thing we have on the slaying of the Klingon gods is from Deep Space Nine's, from the wedding ceremony.
Worf's sort of offhanded joke comment. Or maybe it wasn't a joke.
Well, during the wedding ceremony, they go through the whole first the creation of the first Klingon by the gods, and the creation of the Klingon woman, because something about his heart faltering, and then together they basically team up and slay the gods.
And I do plan to refer back to that in my trilogy too.
But I'm not sure exactly if they gave a time frame on that or not.
There's a lot of room to play with, considering a lot of what we have to go on is vague statements, and things that are many thousands of years later could be beliefs and traditions change over time, especially over millennia. So you could play with it a lot and make it your own. I mean, you don't have to take everything that's said as gospel because it's that much later in the timeline that people are saying these things. So who knows if they're accurate? And
I will throw a wrench into that even further. And this millennia is assuming a Earth-link millennia. And that may not be the case.
We don't know how long a year is on Kronos.
No, we don't.
And that brings up another thing which I was talking about on Twitter not too long ago, which is the Universal Translator.
Yes.
It's established in the Voyager episode The 37s that you can essentially speak your native language. You don't necessarily have to learn English. You can speak your native language. People will hear it as English, and you'll hear whatever they're speaking to you back in your native language.
Oh, it's established even further in Deep Space Nine that Quark, Rom, and Nog are all speaking Ferengi.
Yes.
The minute the translator breaks down, they're back to speaking Ferengi.
Mm-hmm. So this whole time, Worf is either speaking Klingon, which he would have learned as a little kid, or Russian, because that's where he grew up. So there could be something lost in translation when he makes that statement, Klingon warriors slew their gods a millennia ago. So we don't know if that's translated really properly in English as what he meant. Or it could just be generalizing.
I would assume that Worf is probably bilingual.
I would suspect a lot of them are. I would think that languages would be a required course at Starfleet Academy. But you never know.
Yeah.
At least Federation standard.
I'm sure it's a required course if you're going into communications.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Um,
Because it would be easy to get sort of lazy when you have a universal translator. You just speak your language and everybody understands, and you understand everybody, whatever language they're speaking. But, it would seem like Starfleet, if they were into prudent planning at all, would have their people learn languages.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know that it was a required course. It might be a specialized course.
But anyway, as far as the Foundry goes, I mean, you essentially have everybody speaking whatever language you want. You could have people speaking an alien language. You could invent an alien language if you wanted. I think I've seen people do that, where you encounter a new race and the universal translator doesn't necessarily work. But we have definitely gone off on a tangent, as we like to do. Personally, anything involving the ancient Klingons, I would love to see as a Foundry mission. I have long thought, because I'm a big fan of the Star's Spartacus series, that we ought to have a TV show about ancient Klingons. On one of the streaming networks or one of the networks like HBO or Stars, where you can have, because it's ancient Klingons, it ought to be violent, it ought to be bloody, and gratuitous slow motion.
Of course,
absolutely, it would be awesome. To see what you could properly do with modern fight choreography techniques with batleths and things like that.
I don't know. I think a purely Klingon show would be a tough sell.
Be interesting. But it's a changing market, television. It's a changing realm where you have the streaming services making their own shows now. And it isn't necessarily the same as it was. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes it a tougher sell or an easier sell. And probably no one's out there selling it because it's only my idea.
I was kind of a fan of that show Michael Dorn was pitching a while back with Captain Worf.
Oh, Captain Worf? I think he's still sort of got it in mind. I heard something new about it the other day, and I can't remember what it was exactly.
I personally think a Titan TV show would have been awesome, but I think we're kind of past the expiration date on that one.
Yeah, Frakes is a little bit old for that.
Yeah.
The only other person I've ever seen who I think could really play the same sort of Commander Riker as Frakes did is, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show White Collar.
Yes.
But the actor Matt Bomer, who's one of the main guys on that, he has that same sort of easygoing panache that Jonathan Frakes had. So, but I think he'd be a bit too young to go on the Titan missions, because those take place in Riker's 40 something, if not older. But yeah, I mean that could have been a fun one for sure. And Nemesis is set up where it'd be easy to do, or would have been easy to do at the time. Maybe they wanted to do it.
Okay, so at the risk of sending this off on a completely different tangent.
Hey, we like tangents.
And not even a particularly Foundry-related one. If, let's say we did get some kind of present-day Star Trek series, assuming it's not like some prequel or something like that, would you like it to connect with or pay some kind of respect to Stowe?
I think it'd be cool if it did. I think it would actually probably more go the other way around, where Stowe, if they were smart, would tie into it.
Because, I mean, I would hate to see it be a direct spin-off of Stowe or anything like that. I'd like have both of them to have enough space to kind of do their own thing, but at the same time, it'd be nice if they played a little bit of homage to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sir Boulevard in chat says Stowe the series, which you could use. Yeah, you could use characters from Stowe like Sean or Commander Jarrock or President Okeg or all kinds of people from Stowe. There's all kinds of great characters that could be used in the TV show. I always kind of had it in my mind that if you were to do Stowe the series, what you could do is actually have sort of 3 storylines, mirroring the player experience, where you have a Klingon crew and a captain, and a Federation crew and a captain, and a Romulan crew and a captain, and you do sort of event series where you do an arc for the Federation captain, then you switch over and do an arc for the Klingon captain. And, you have them sort of interlock sometimes with them meeting each other, as you might do in big galactic events. But kind of self-contained, where you have sort of... And I think this is something you could probably only do as like a Netflix series, where you could watch them all at once instead of having them one each week, because otherwise you'd switch over and spend 3 weeks with the Federation captain and leaving the other ones to not do anything.
What if you were to have all 3 and have a group of 3 ships that have been sent off on some joint mission? Something that's far enough away from known space that it doesn't really get impacted by what's going on in Stowe, but at the same time...
You could do that. Have 3 ships from the 3 races be sent on a joint mission.
I know, I just kind of keep thinking of Defiance and their attempts to kind of unify an MMO in a TV show.
Oddly, Defiance... What seems to happen is you see... I've played a little bit of Defiance, and I've watched the first season and the first episode of the second season. There's not really all that much crossover. I mean, you see sometimes a couple of the characters from the TV show in the game, but that's really about it. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of crossover.
Yeah.
And I think you could do more with crossover.
I think it could too, but I think if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has shown me anything, that doing those cross-media connections is really challenging, because you're working with 2 completely different production teams that are going to want to have certain amount of creative leeway.
Oh, yeah. And I've read interviews with Joss Whedon, and he says that the people who are in charge of the cinematic universe, the movie part of it, weren't necessarily thrilled about having the TV show there and having to interconnect with it. But I think it's actually made Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a better show.
Yeah, I think so too, and I personally think having that cross platform interaction is a huge boon, and something that I think, like you said, I could be explored so much deeper, especially if you can get some kind of get the 2 sides talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. Now, the difficult part of it is timing, because as we've seen with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it works in the American market. In the UK market, the episodes of the TV show are very, very delayed, like months delayed. They're just getting... I think they've just now gotten to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode that ties in with Avengers 2. So
I never really understood that differentiated release, or those staggered releases.
I couldn't tell you why. I just know that it has happened.
Especially in this digital age where distribution is next to nothing.
Well, that's why I'm saying, I mean, if you're going to do one, go for the Netflix route, where you can essentially release it simultaneously worldwide. And Netflix isn't the only one. Amazon Instant Video is doing their own shows now. Some of them were pretty good. So it's a changing world as far as TV goes. And maybe this is the right time for Star Trek to come back in some kind of form that we haven't seen it before.
Yeah. You have to get CBS on board.
You have to get CBS on board, which could be more difficult than it sounds. I don't know. Obviously, since Enterprise, nobody has found the wherewithal to actually get something off the ground as far as Star Trek goes, other than the films. So something's got to give somewhere to make it happen. And I don't know where the holdup might be. But what I would like to see happen is to have something happen in Star Trek on TV. Love to have a new show. What I definitely don't want to see happen is to have it invalidate Stowe completely. Because what seems to be happening in the Star Wars universe, we got the new Star Wars film coming out, is that they have essentially invalidated all of the expanded universe.
Which is one of the things I loved about Star Wars was the fact that they did have this cohesive expanded universe. Mm-hmm. It is so hard for me to read Star Trek books because they've got this book that kind of goes off in this tangent, and this one goes off in this tangent, and these two tangents cannot coexist, and it becomes frustrating. Because I don't want multiple versions of my personal canon. I want one to know this happened, this happened, this happened.
Yeah. And it's such a shame to sort of lose, I'm doing the air quotes again, lose characters like Mara Jade and Grand Admiral Thrawn and people like that that are great characters that would be awesome to have in the movies, in the new movies that are coming on. But it's still, I'm sure, difficult for somebody to look at all that established stuff and say, but I want to make my own movie. So I kind of understand why they're doing it. It's just a shame. And it's not like we're sort of really losing those characters because, obviously nobody's coming to my house and taking the book from my shelf and taking it away. So the characters are still out there. They still exist. And fans being what they are, I'm sure when I see the new Star Wars movie, I could always spend some time figuring out some crazy twisted theory of how the books that I love are actually still canon.
I think it's going to be tough.
It might be tough, yeah. Relum says he thought the Thrawn trilogy, who were written by Timothy Zahn, way back in the early 90s, I believe, or maybe even late 80s, should have been episodes 7 through 9. And I absolutely agree with you, Relum, but that should have been 20 years ago, if that was going to be done. Because the characters, it's supposed to be maybe 3 or 4 years after the Battle of Endor, the end of the episode 6. So the time to make that would have been about 20 years ago. All the guys are too old now. You'd have to recast Luke, Leia, and Han, and I would not want them to do that.
Didn't Chewbacca get killed off in the not post Return of the Jedi?
They dropped a moon on him.
Yep.
Well, I mean, as far as it goes, it was a pretty epic death, but
Kirk only had a bridge dropped on him, so a moon is much better.
Yeah.
Although, as usual, a lot of fans have their own sort of head canon, things that they accept as having happened, whether it was on screen or in a book or whatever. And I have long been a fan of the Shatner books. Read into that what you will, but I enjoy them, and so I consider Kirk to not really have died on Viridian 3, but to have all these other adventures having happened to him. So, I'm sure I will figure out some kind of headcanon to go with the new Star Wars movie. But it does make things difficult and also easier for Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO that's going on right now, because they have been also sort of relegated to that they're calling it Legends now. The previous extended universe. They're involved in that. So they're sort of at the same time, it gives them some freedom because they don't have to. They're sort of not canon anymore. So, but also that can be a downside. But if Stowe were to become sort of that completely invalidated by something that's canon, I think that would be a shame. And a shame for our Foundry missions, too. Those of us who like to fit it in with the Stowe storyline.
Our Foundry missions are a non-canon to the non-canon of the Stowe.
Our Foundry missions are about as non-canon as you can get, but we also, there's a lot of us who like to fit it in with the world of Stowe and that timeline. And it would be a shame if we were to have a further level of this is not happening. So we're getting into layers of reality here. That's very, very deep, very meta, as the hipsters like to say. But see, I was able to bring your tangent back to the Foundry. That's a talent.
So, on a related note, as we were kind of talking about earlier before the show started, you had mentioned that, and I've seen a little bit of this, of Sir Boulevard kind of trying to place various Foundry missions within the a unified timeline. And
yeah, let's take a look at that, because he's got an early version, which he linked earlier, which I forgot to open. He's still around. We'll ask him to link that again. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting project because some of us have very definite spots where we place our missions in the timeline, and some of us don't.
Yeah. Because I know, he was asking me where the Midas series falls, and it really doesn't. I think the only thing that might have affected it slightly is that we're doing a lot more with Iconian gateways. And
yeah,
obviously, I didn't plan for adventures in the Delta Quadrant when I put this out in the far-flung reaches of space, which kind of puts the center of activity a little bit closer to the far reaches of space than I originally planned. But I mean, other than that, I didn't plan a specific.
When you built it, you were not necessarily. You didn't know that they were going to the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah.
Most of my Ghosts of War series is kind of spread out across the 2409 portion of the timeline. Like that, I add historical notes saying before each mission, saying which point in the timeline each mission takes place at. And then, of course, my Valley of the Shadow series, I specifically tie that to taking place in between the Alachi arc and the Riemann arc.
Yeah, and he's got a few in here so far. So he's got Purity as sitting between the Breen invasion episodes of Cryptics and the STFs. He's got your Shadows of Midas sort of after the STFs, but before the Tholian stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of guess it. I mean, if I had to put a tag to it, I would say that a reliance on the Midas array probably puts it before Sphere of Influence. But after.
And some of these are a little hard to place in the timeline as well. Some of the even some of the cryptic missions. Things like the Nukara Prime stuff. Where exactly does that fit in the timeline? It's sort of outside, and not necessarily connected to everything else. We just kind of have to place it somewhere. Let's see, who else's Foundry missions he's got on here? He's got to Helna and back, and animations with Helna. Those go on back in the Klingon War arc. He's got I believe these are some of P. Sutherland's missions going on kind of in between the Tholian stuff on Nukara and the building New Romulus. His own honor of series is after the Dyson Sphere, but before A Step Between the Stars. Let's see, Rise of Mulrahan, and that's Pete Sutherland, and Pete Sutherland's upcoming Death at Mulrahan are going on in the Iconian War, along with Catastrophe at Kate, Echoes of the D1s, Common Ground, and Derelict. Common Ground is a cryptic mission, isn't it? I'm not quite sure I'm up on his color coding scheme just yet. I'm sure he'll figure that out. Obviously, there's a lot to add if you're going through everybody's Foundry missions. Even if you were just to stick to Spotlight missions, there'd be tons and tons of them. So this is a big undertaking. I could probably sit down and figure out where exactly each of my missions will be placed. Shouldn't be too hard. I'm actually moving the Descent series, so that'll be different. But I'd encourage him to make a post on the forums, and we'll see what kind of response he gets. Because I think it would be kind of neat to have a timeline of Foundry missions, so that somebody who is a player who's not necessarily encountering these missions out there, but actually looking for missions, can take a look at this list and see exactly, okay, so there's this mission that takes place back during the Klingon War. Okay, I'll go play that. And he understands that it takes place in the Klingon War era.
And this could be a good guide for players. Maybe sort of a Foundry leveling guide, so to speak.
Absolutely.
They want to explore some stuff while they're leveling up their character. They can try these Foundry missions as they're going through the main story.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing he might have to have is 2 timelines, one for KDF and one for Fed. It might be difficult and a little confusing to have them on the same timeline.
And a third for don't forget them.
Well, either a third or asterisks for Romulan missions. I don't know. I'll leave that part up to him.
Anyway, so Boulevard, if you get a thread started, I will link to it in the show notes.
Absolutely. It also might help for people who are looking at series of missions, and missions that aren't series but are sort of sequels to each other, follow-ups, to tell, okay, this one comes first and it's here, and then here's the next one, and it's at this point in the timeline. So that can be helpful for that sort of thing. Like to say that I wanted to go back and play P. Sutherland's missions, I could see, okay, look back and look at the titles. Okay, yeah, here's the first one. So I start there. That's a very useful thing. All right, well, we will keep up with that as he fills in the blanks there. So I've got a few more of these things left that I wanted to do in the Foundry. So, Dragoon, if you want to load things up.
Okay.
While you're doing that, I've come up with something that I'd like to ask lots of people, because I think it sort of tells us about you in a way. So, Pax, what is your favorite episode of Star Trek across all the series?
Across all the series, that's kind of a tough one. Oh,
because it can tell us a lot about you.
Okay.
And about the things that you like, and about the kind of contributions that you make.
I'd have to go with one of the usual suspects, which would be Best of Both Worlds, the 2-parter.
Well, that kind of tells us that you like action. That is an action show. It's also high drama and is very affecting to the characters. It also is it's kind of bleak. It's kind of a bleak show, but there's hope at the end.
Yep. And as you probably noticed by now, a lot of my Foundry missions go kind of the same way.
Although, interestingly enough, I haven't seen a lot of Borg in your missions, if any. I don't know. You might have some in missions I haven't played, but
Nope, no Borg. I'm not getting.
Borg are sort of difficult to write for, aren't they? I imagine that must have been a difficulty that the show's writers faced. Dragoon, what is your favorite episode of Star Trek?
Tough call. Obviously, Best of Both Worlds is an incredible episode, and I love it. I would say Yesterday's Enterprise is another favorite of mine.
I actually just watched that the other day because I've been following along with somebody on Twitter who is watching TNG for the first time. She's seen other episodes of Star Trek, but is watching through one episode at a time and tweeting along with it. And just yesterday, in fact, Monday was Yesterday's Enterprise, which is great fun. Definitely one of my favorites.
I think what I love about it, though, is that it's such a surreal episode because it transforms all of the characters you've, by this point, really gotten to know well, and it turns them on their side. And so it just provides this surreal, like, I know you, but I don't quite know you. And it just makes the whole thing a little bit uncanny.
Like, Picard and Riker have this very adversarial conversation, or confrontational nature with each other that, of course, they don't have in the regular universe.
Yeah, and Picard is much colder.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
he practically yells at Guinan, which is something that you'd never see him do in the regular universe.
And just, of course, the fact that Tasha gets to take center stage, and we get to see a little bit of this character that was killed off, and what life would have been like had she lived.
You see almost more about her and learn more about her than you do in the entire first season of the show, where she was a regular character.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, you were going back to ways in which our favorite episodes inspire our Foundry missions and how we make. And I gotta say, a big episode that affected my missions was the ending to, I believe it was Azadi Prime, which is Enterprise episode in season 3. And just that sense of feeling of completely helpless, like they were like so outmatched.
You're gonna have to remind me exactly what the ending was.
So the thing about that really struck me about the episode, and really was the ending, was that it was the one where they finally find where the weapon's being built, and they go in and they're sneaking around and they've got this plan to destroy it, but at the last minute the weapon's gone and their position is discovered, and they basically beat Enterprise to within an inch of its life. I mean, the thing is...
Okay, yeah.
And it's one of the few times in Star Trek where the events that occur in that episode actually had ramifications throughout the rest of the series. Because, I mean, or throughout, actually, the rest of the season. Because beyond that point, Enterprise is in this horribly damaged state. And it takes them like 3 or 4 episodes to even just get up to semi-running again. And so just that feeling of that scene had so much weight behind it, because it's not something that they can write off at the end of the episode. I like Best of Both Worlds a lot for the same reason, though. The impact was a little bit less, and then it was more emotional scars that kind of carried on beyond that episode.
Yeah.
Of course, that sort of thing was pretty much Deep Space Nine stock and trade.
Yeah,
was character development.
Yeah, watching the Defiant get blown up was pretty intense too.
It's definitely an oh my god moment.
I almost kind of see Enterprise season 3 as the writers finally getting to do the kind of things that they could have done with Voyager. I mean, not that I don't enjoy parts of Voyager, and there are a lot of episodes I do like in Voyager.
Well, funny enough, often, as I've alluded to, I've on a Battlestar Galactica podcast as well, and we sort of have had discussions about how Battlestar Galactica was sort of the anti-Voyager, where you take something that is almost the same plot line as Voyager and do with it what the writers really wanted to do, or some of them anyway, which is, go really dark and, what would it really be like if this ship, or in this case, a convoy of ships on the run, out in deep space, no resources, all that kind of stuff, and really take it to the extreme.
Yeah,
out on their own.
My own complaint against that show is that it was so dark. It was really hard for me to relate to any of the characters because they were in such this dark place.
Well, there are maybe disadvantages to going that route.
And Absolutely. I do like that Voyager got to be goofier occasionally. Mm-hmm. I love the holodeck episodes, like with Captain Proton and Fairhaven, especially the one where they think the Fairhaven folks think Voyager is evil spirits. It's like just absolutely hilarious. But I mean, I like shows that have that contrast.
My favorite episode across all of Star Trek is The Wounded, and I like the sort of far-ranging political aspects of it, of showing that sort of a wider universe exists, and there are other captains and crews going through different things, and I like to try and bring that sort of thing to my Foundry episodes.
Now, refresh me. The Wounded is the TNG episode with the Renegade Captain?
Yes, the Renegade Captain is going off on the Cardassians because he thinks they're arming for war. But the question is, is this all in his head? He's a veteran of this war, which, of course, had never been mentioned before, which is another issue. He's a veteran of that war. He was very scarred by it, lost his family. And, the question is this all in his mind? Is he going off because of post-traumatic stress syndrome? Or are they really doing this? And at the end, you get that wonderful speech from Picard that says, he was right. I had to do this to keep the peace, but he was right. You guys are arming, and we are watching you. Picard is no fool. So, those are the sort of things that I like to bring to my Foundry missions.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of embodies the complexities that Star Trek like to put into its stories. That Absolutely. it's not obviously one or the other.
Shades of gray. Lots more than 50.
I don't even want to say that because, I mean, it's not like they don't try to strive for a moral high ground. It's just that in trying to find that high ground, it's often not as simple as black and white.
Something which DS9 did very well.
Yeah.
Many episodes. People in chat room, Primar says, In the Pale Moonlight, which of course is a very dark episode, very moral gray areas. It's one of those road to hell is paved with good intentions kind of an episode.
Yeah.
It's a fake. Sir
It was a
Boulevard
very
says,
well done episode.
It listed several. Way of the Warrior, Trials and Tribulations, Yesterday's Enterprise, Q-Who, and The Devil in the Dark, of course, very good TOS episode. Very much one of those that turns expectations on its head. You expect this Horta to be a vicious creature that's killing miners, and really it's the one that's the victim.
Yeah.
In a way. And
that's probably why we find Star Trek so endearing.
Funny enough, none of the episodes people have named are what I would call exploration episodes. Seeking out new life forms, maybe, in a couple of cases, like Q-Who, you're finding out about the Borg, Devil in the Dark, finding out about the Horta and what they're like. But very few are sort of about exploring new worlds. Interesting.
Here's the secret: is that wasn't really what Star Trek was.
Wasn't really about. What the show's about. The show's about its characters
exploring the human condition.
Absolutely.
Going out into space was just a place to reflect on that.
So, are you in the Foundry?
I am in the Foundry.
Excellent. So, let's see. What are the other ones we have here? A good one to do that I've seen you demonstrate before, but is always a good one to have you do again, is make an object to be interacted with have that extra glow. I know you know how to do.
Explain to me what you mean.
Okay, so back when we were doing we were live building the Foundry mission, you created this glow, you used an asset to do it, around an object that you were going to have the player interact with. As sort of an extra emphasis that says, go here and do this.
Okay, so you're saying, like, for instance, if you wanted to, like, place a bomb or something where you wanted to show the location for an object that wasn't actually there.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you could do it for an object that's there and for an object that's not there.
So...
I'm asking this not only in part because I always forget what asset you use to do this.
Okay, so I've already got to interact with object here. That'll work fine. So let's see. Okay, something I've done before. Let's do some pattern enhancers. Oop, I'm not spelling.
So the task for the player will be to place some pattern enhancers.
Yes.
It's always good, always something that used to happen on Star Trek. Got some areas where it's tough to beam in or out. So I put some pattern enhancers to enhance the patterns.
All right. Actually going to not use... We're going to go with something really small, and we're going to use the old standby martini glass.
I thought we'd grown out of the martini glass, but I guess not.
Well, the funny thing about the martini glass is it is one of the smallest objects we have, and it is a lot smaller than a lot of the invisible objects. So it has a smaller activation area. All right, so I'm going to use these martini glasses, and I'm probably going to sink them into the floor just a tad. Yeah, which I can't do with the snap to grid on. So negative 0.3 will be fine.
Ah, you forgot Foundry 101.
Yes.
Only have snap to grid on if you want it.
You want to tell them about our little idea of the rules of Foundry as a play off of the rules of acquisition?
Well, that would be one of them, is always check snap to grid. Dragoon had this idea of essentially putting down some sort of rules of the Foundry, which really sort of have to be more like guidelines.
Well, yeah.
Instead of, quote, rules. But of course, that was said about the rules of acquisition, too. And it's only just good marketing to have them rules. But I don't know, what other things were you thinking of for the rules of the Foundry?
I think we've decided that rule number 1 was going to be don't hesitate to go ask the community questions.
Definitely that's a good one.
I've been thinking of a couple of them. What I would do is never replace the player's bridge officer.
Never replace them.
Yeah.
As in never show the helmsman of the ship because the player has already designated that person. Never show the chief engineer.
Is don't introduce characters with the express intent of replacing the bridge officer.
Yeah. Actually, I had that complaint one time because I had somebody in the engineering room who was labeled as chief and with a name. My intention was have her be a chief petty officer, kind of like Mr. O'Brien. But somebody took that as they were supposed to be the chief engineer, and they said, but I already have a chief engineer. And so they dinged me on there. So I went in and specifically typed in chief petty officer.
Yeah. Another one is always remember to tell them where your mission is.
Certainly a good one.
I'm
Sir
sure
Boulevard
there's
says a
other
way to
ones.
get around that is to say I'm the backup helmsman, or maybe I'm the assistant chief engineer, or things like that. Somebody who's not a
Second
who could be
tertiary
sort of-
helmsman on the backup bridge.
Mhm.
Well, there's another one. Never show the player's bridge.
You've broken that one.
I have totally broken that one just to see if I could get away with it.
Yeah, essentially these are going to be things that we're going to tell people to do, even though we've broken all of them.
Well, like I said, they're guidelines because
Sort of makes it
there's
more funny.
obviously always going to be some obscure exception to the rule.
I think
right.
one of the things that brought it about was a discussion of canon characters, which we always say don't use canon characters, but a lot of us have used canon characters. You just can't use a real person's likeness. So, where are you at in our object
Okay,
process?
I'm setting up the triggers that we'll use to place the... I suddenly realized it. For years, I have been wondering, when you have a object tied to an objective, it limits your choices.
Yes.
But when making it invisible again, you have the choice of this component complete or this objective complete. And up until now, I could never understood what the distinction was. And I just realized because I'm setting up 3 pattern enhancers within a single objective, I need to set a component complete because the objective will not complete until all 3 are triggered. So that is what that is for.
Yeah, Primar makes the point of, when you're telling people where to start your mission, you got to make sure it's in multiple places.
Yeah.
And I always say that there are sort of 3, where the first one is in the mission summary. Second one is in the opening dialogue of the mission, preferably put it in green or yellow text, the mission text or the OOC text. And then the third one is a little more complicated. You put it in this is so it shows up in the person's little objective window. You got to put it as the title of the first map, or I should say the mission text of the first map.
Yeah, so it's there in their objective list.
And actually, now that we have the top 3 system, there's a 4th place you should put it. Actually, no, that covers it, because if you put it in the opening dialogue, that'll cover it. Even though the player should already be there, but you never know if they'll pick up the mission and accept it and then do it again later.
Yeah.
One thing I've taken to doing when showing the mission location is have the system, the sector, and the quadrant.
Yep.
So they'll know exactly where to look.
I've been bad. I have not gone and updated my missions to that yet. They still say sector blocks.
I would say you don't necessarily need the sector, since as long as they're in the quadrant, they can search for this system in the list. But yeah,
it's a thing. It doesn't hurt to have it.
I just figured it'll make it that a little bit easier for people to find if they choose to look the old-fashioned way, I guess you could say.
Yeah, just as long as they. Or as long as you don't blow the text limit on the mission info or the map info text.
It's true. And one rule that I go by, which I've mentioned before, when writing dialogue, is what I've taken to be calling the Janeway rule, which is always refer to the player's character as captain, not sir or ma'am, not by their in-game rank.
I don't know. I think you'll find a whole lot of debate about that one.
In bridge officer dialogue, at least. People outside the bridge crew, it's appropriate to refer to them. It's appropriate for them to refer to the player by rank, but not really player's own crew.
Yeah, I use rank or sir.
There's several different areas of debate on that one.
Yeah.
Which are too much to go into at the moment.
Which I think
We
we've
should
already
probably have
talked
a whole
on
show.
couple
We should
weeks
probably
ago.
have a whole show about that, but I think we have already talked about it. It's sort of one of those that's sort of up to each individual author what to do on it.
What I would say is could be a rule is be consistent with your dialogue formatting.
Yeah. Do as far as that goes, do it one way and don't switch between multiple different ways.
Yeah.
And a good way to go about it is be as neutral as you can when referring to players or bridge officers, because you don't know anything about them. All right, Dragoon, where are you at?
Okay, so I got my triggers in place, tied to my objectives. I've got the pattern enhancers themselves in place, triggered to show up when each of the triggers is triggered. Now I need my effect. So if we go over here to effects, we can see all the cool effects that we have. I want to say the one we're looking for. I actually remember what it's called. Okay, so the two options you have are light rays, small, 1 and 2. 2 is a little bit larger, so it might be good for if you have to like place a crate. We're going to go with the smaller one since we're going with a relatively small object. And I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm noticing that it's a lot easier to get these all set up if they're all uniformly numbered. So for 1, place it in there.
Funny enough, you're actually giving me ideas of something to do in my upcoming mission, my Iconian War mission. I had something that was just going to be done in dialogue, but I'm thinking of a way to do it better, to show rather than tell. It's just a very small part of the mission, but I think it will make it a little bit better.
All right. Make sure I got that one. Okay. Duplicate. V2.
Obviously, you need to set this particular object to disappear once you have interacted with it.
Yeah. 8. 3rd. All right, and unfortunately, because I'm doing this all in one objective, I can't tie it to the objective itself, but I can tie it to the
Individual
I want to
objects.
complete. So let's see, this is 1, so let's tie it to place enhancer 1, which is my little martini glass. 2, and we're gonna uncomplete 2. And this is reasons why taking time to name your objects can often pay off. Obviously, you don't have to do it for everything, but stuff you're definitely things that you're going to interact with. All right. I think everything is set. I'm going to space these out just a little bit more so I don't have them too close together. Obviously, it's a little hard to judge scale in the map editor.
Yeah, you have to figure it out when you preview the map.
And sometimes it's better to keep like objectives for individual objects separate, but sometimes they can be used to effect to kind of simplify the timeline or keep. Okay, there's my 3 objects. If I run up to one, I have to place pattern enhancer. And how about that? Worked perfectly.
Little glowy areas on the ground that disappear when the object goes.
Yep.
A great asset for people, so...
I use the martini glass as the trigger because they're very small. Footprint means I had to actually get pretty close to the object to trigger it. If I used like an invisible object or the glowy rays themselves, it would have created a much wider area. And speaking from personal experience, the triggers would probably have overlapped. Oh, and one final tweak. You can choose a nice animation. So
Absolutely.
So interact kneeling 02 would work perfectly for this. And set the duration to medium. And so if each time that they go up to the glow, then they will kneel down, do their little interact, and place the pattern enhancer.
So once again, just for the record, the objects that provide these lights are?
They are the light rays, small O1 and O2, which I can't show you, but
sure, yeah.
These are the guys. You can find all sorts of these kinds of effects under the effects.
Excellent. Okay, so looks like we only have time for one more. So how about this one? Create a flying shuttle.
Okay, this one's going to be a little trickier because I don't have a ton of personal experience.
I pretty much know how. So if you need...
I know how, I don't know the values off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
we can
need it.
Do it sort of in general. So what you need is a ground map.
Yep. We now actually have more options than we used to.
Yeah, we have a lot more different shuttles. But essentially what you're going to need is a series of reach markers that the player is going to run across that trigger a series of shuttles starting at one point and ending at another, so that it will appear to move across the sky, even though it's actually separate objects spawning in and spawning out.
Oh.
That's what I'm thinking of. I don't know. Were you thinking of something different?
Okay, there are easier ways.
There are easier ways. Really?
We're not doing anything crazy like taking off, are we?
Well, what I was thinking of actually for possibly an upcoming mission is showing a shuttle almost on a bombing run. So essentially, as the player is running across the battlefield, have a shuttle come across a little bit in the distance, and that, you know, showing it flying across, and then a series of explosions.
Okay, so we have animated shuttles.
Oh, that's right, we do now.
And so, we had animated shuttles before. I just am not recalling what that was called.
Well, we had a sky. It was an FX that showed shuttles moving in sort of random grid patterns up in the sky.
Yeah, there's that. There's a sky traffic, but
there
was actually another shuttle that was like closer, and I would have to go into one of my old missions to see what. Man, you guys will indulge me for a sec. Do we have enough time
the new ones? Sure. The new ones from ESD. The question would be, you know, where to place them so that they go in the right spot.
Yeah.
And timing would also be.
I just posted the link to my spreadsheet in the chat, so you can add that to the show notes. The ESD asset placement.
Here we are. So do you have the? Here they are, the animated shuttles.
Running a little behind. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm loading up my my EVA resolutions back up. Because I know
Sure.
I used an animated shuttle in there. Remember what it was called?
Now, the one on there on that list that I'm not completely sure of is the Club 47 pillar lights. In preview mode, they don't show up, but if you interact to them, if you place it in the middle of the fountain or the waterfall and put an interact there, you can interact with it, even though you can't see it.
So it's like a display issue?
The object is there, but does it work in publish?
I haven't tried it.
That would be the thing to try. It may... I don't know why, but it may be one of those things that's decided to unpublish. I don't know. What I'm thinking of would be sort of 3 missions down the line from the one I'm building right now, where you and some Federation soldiers do a big invasion style thing on the planet. It would start out in a sort of custom built shuttle interior that would fade out so that suddenly you're on the planet, so it's like you've landed. And then you have this big open area that you got to get across while artillery is being shot at you. And then you'll see the bombing run at the end. We'll try and get the artillery as you're running towards it. And then you have to fight some, I don't know, probably Heralds or Ilachi when you get to that end that have already been softened up a bit by the bombardment.
Yeah.
I thought it would be pretty neat to see a shuttle come right in front of you and explosions go off underneath it.
That would just be a matter of timing and getting it to fly across just at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I can't find what I was looking for, so...
So Boulevard says, Thomas the Cat wants more appearances of his NPC and the USS Pathfinder. Let's make it so. So Sir Boulevard, the USS Pathfinder, do we have a working skin for that in the game? Because I know those weren't exactly working before. The new Intrepid variant.
So as soon as
as we wait a moment for him to catch up.
It's reloading. I can tell you.
Add that to this Gambit, that big opening battle scene. I've already got Greendragoon ship in there.
Yeah, so you were asking for people to put their ships in that, weren't you?
Yeah. So far, I've only got 2 takers.
You should tell Thomas that we accept Foundry assets as bribes.
Yes, we do. Pretty sure he knows how to add things, at least costume parts.
Okay. But in answer to your question...
We do have ground model for that.
True, we do. That could be fun. Yeah, that's not what I need. All right, I don't see it under the Intrepid. I don't see a listing for the Pathfinder. Let me try the...
I seem to remember crashing the game not too long ago, but that may have been on Tribble or something.
What's its not the Pathfinder. What's it else is it called?
Well, I think it might be under customization for the Intrepid.
Yeah, I checked. It's not there.
There's several different types. There's several different entries for the Intrepid, though, as I recall.
Well, I see 2. There's a Fed Intrepid class, retrofit Fed Intrepid class vessel. Not on either of those. Is there a third one for the?
They might have cleaned up that list since the last time we looked at it. Let's see. Sir Boulevard and Primar are saying the Pathfinder is not in yet.
Okay, but I assume it's in as a NPC costume, or as an NPC contact.
No, I think that's the one that they're. I don't think it's in as a NPC contact. I know the one place it is in the ground, the full scale ground one.
Well, didn't Sir Boulevard just have a mission with it in it?
Did he use that, or did he use the USS Avenger? Because wasn't Thomas Cat piloting the USS Avenger at some point? Or Thomas's in-game character, Captain Maroney? Saying he's conversing with him on Twitter. Let's see what he's saying. He says he's not sure which build it is going to be, so maybe it's in tomorrow's build.
Okay, well.
So anyway, back to flying shuttles. In the few remaining minutes we've got.
All right, more than just enough time to see what happens.
The challenges for flying shuttles would be when you put one down, as far as the ESD ones go, is timing out, figuring out where it's going to be and how long it takes to do its rounds.
Yeah.
And then you would need to figure out placing so that it flies where you want it to fly, because they have set patterns that they fly.
I could have sworn there was an animated shuttle that we had prior to the new ESD stuff.
I don't remember one.
I remember seeing it in missions. I don't know if it was part of Sky Traffic or it was its own asset. I thought it was its own asset. All right, anybody see the shuttle? Oh, there it goes.
And figuring out how far away it's going to be from its from the dot is also another thing you have to consider.
That is quite a large. Oh, it's more than one. I think that's all the shuttles. I suspect this is.
He had quite a variety of traffic going through.
You could probably still use it. They're spawning from over this way.
It would be a matter of sitting there and observing the timing.
Yeah.
And I think it would be actually sort of difficult.
Assuming they start from when you trigger them, you could still probably do your.
Yeah, if I make sure that the player triggers them, essentially have it appear.
All right, there's another one. And obviously I've got 100 meters in the air.
Yeah.
You bring it down closer.
Altitude, of course, is important. Now, what's the name of the asset that you used?
This is the ESD Cargo Bay MISC animated shuttles.
What I'm thinking I might do is maybe have some of those, have place down a few of those so that they're flying around in sort of the background, and then for the hero shot, use the old version where you have a series of reach markers that the player's running across, and that triggers a series of shuttle assets. Just so I make sure that it's on my timing as much as I can. Because it's got to coordinate with explosions on the ground.
All right, so the thing to remember about these is they're essentially going in a really massive circle.
Yes.
So obviously they were flying over the origin point, but they were clearly doing a wide arc circle. So, how close are we to our time?
We're about at the end here because we started a little bit late. If you have anything more to add on this particular flying shuttle topic,
yeah. I could spend much of the evening playing around with this just to get it just right.
So that's one of those that you're going to have some trial and error if you want to use those and try and make something specific with it. Have them fly a specific place at a specific time. But there's always the old-fashioned method.
Yes. Unfortunately, the old-fashioned method is horribly complicated, and I've actually chosen to avoid it for that very reason. It's basically faking animation through stop motion.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, as a lot of the best special effects wizards will tell you, using a combination of techniques can often get you the result you're looking for.
Unfortunately, it also eats up your object limit.
A little bit. But I'm kind of not expecting to be at the full object limit on this particular map. So,
well, I would try.
This is just the initial stage of the invasion. So,
all right. Well, I suppose we should probably wrap up here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on again.
Always a pleasure.
If people want to email us, we can be reached at foundryroundtable@live.com. We're also on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Drogon can be reached at Drogon1701. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman, and I can be reached at Greendragoon. Pax?
I can be reached at NCC89471 without the dash.
Okay.
Which is also your in-game handle if people want to look for your Foundry missions.
No, that my in-game handle has the dash.
Oh, it has the dash.
Yeah.
So NCC dash.
Yeah. NCC-89471 in-game without the dash on Twitter.
Excellent.
And it's just on the forums that you go by PaxFederatica?
Correct.
All right, well, we will say good night.
Good night.
And happy foundering.
All right.